Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What Do They Know podcast. Today, the guys are going to discuss some of the headlines from this past week, including episode 3 of HBO's Hard Knocks, and then they will continue their divisional breakdowns and cover the NFC and AFC North. Check it out. But hey, what do they know?
What do they know? Well, you're about to find out. What's going on, everybody? This is episode 3 of the What Do They Know podcast. My name is Nick Hoskins, and I'm with my best bud, Jeff Garcia. What's going on, man? How are you?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good. Hey, before we dive in, I've been meaning to thank a couple people that have kind of helped us out with this show so far, and the first 2 episodes I've completely forgotten. So I just want to give my beautiful wife a quick shout out. She's the voice that you hear doing the intro for us and the outro, and she's also pretty much single-handedly done our social media stuff for us. We don't exactly know what we're doing, but I
can barely manage one account, let alone multiple.
So she's been huge with that. So we want to thank her. And then my sister, Jenna, who is super creative. She does, graphic design and all that good stuff. She actually created our artwork, what you see as like our profile picture on social media and on Spotify and iTunes and all that. Mm-hmm. And I gave her no requirements. I basically just said, it's about football and you can incorporate, the fact that we're from Arizona and New York. And she just went with it and she made it her own. And I think it's awesome. I love it. So just wanted to thank them because they both have played a huge part in what we're doing so far. So, and I keep forgetting to do that.
Well,
so
shout out Christy and Jenna.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out Christy and Jenna. So thank you both. All right. So we actually had a few questions come in this week. My buddy Joe, actually shout out Joe for a minute because I just saw on social media today that my guy got engaged. Oh, so he got engaged today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
hey,
congratulations,
Joe.
Shout out Joe and his fiance. So side note, Joe sent us a question and he wants to know our thoughts on where we think Jonathan Taylor should end up. So I'll let you kind of give your thoughts there. For those of you who don't know, I'll kind of give the backstory. Jonathan Taylor, Colts running back, all pro running back. He has kind of been in a contract dispute basically for all offseason. Mm-hmm. And, the owner, Jim Irsay, has been very outspoken that's saying that he's not going to pay him, that, if Jonathan Taylor was to never play another down in the NFL, he'd shortly be forgotten about. Right. So those are some pretty strong words. And, for the longest time, it was, okay, we're not going to trade you. We're not going to trade you. He formally requested a trade offer. They denied it, publicly saying no. Right. And then within the last week, it's come out that they're letting him seek a trade. So I have a couple thoughts on this, but I'll let you kind of go first. Where do you think that, I guess, he should end up / where is he going to end up? Because I think that's 2 different things.
Absolutely. Obviously, when a talent like Jonathan Taylor becomes available, I'm pretty sure half of the league at least is going to call in and see what the market is for him. What I've heard is they set a deadline for Tuesday.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's when they want to make all of their cuts apparently and kind of get their roster finalized.
Right. So we'll see if they can get anything finalized through that. I know they want a first round pick is what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
I don't think any team's been willing to match that so far. I think Miami put in a formal offer along with another team, but they got rejected. But you're still negotiating, is from what I read. In terms of landing spots, I got plenty right here. Miami, Denver, Chicago, Philly, and Buffalo. Those jump off the page right immediately. Miami obviously has kind of gone down this path before with Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb, where they get disgruntled players and they trade for them and they pay them. And it's worked out for them. They've become quite a team over there in the AFC East. And we'll delve more into them next week when we go into that division. But for right now, they have Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. as their combo, their committee over there.
Yep.
And it's let's face it, it's not the greatest committee to have. No. They're talented running backs, but they're more complementary running backs, and one of them should be featured over the other. So I think they had the 7th fewest rushing yards last year and 2nd fewest carries. So Jonathan Taylor would definitely be a huge upgrade for Miami.
Yeah.
However, one thing that's against them is they're projected to be $32 million over the cap next year. So you're going to trade for him, you're going to have to pay that man.
Yep.
And that's going to set you even back for at least the foreseeable future. Chicago, Chicago was so interesting to me. They have a very talented offense. They have a lot of pieces there, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later. But as for right now, they have Khalil Herbert right there at the running back position. He finally gets his chance with David Montgomery taking off from there. And they have a lot of cap space. I think they have $84 million next year in cap space, and that's even with, I think they led the league entering this offseason in cap space. So they're in good position, especially with Justin Fields still in his rookie years, to take advantage of that as long as you can. So that's Chicago, and then I heard Denver. The problem with Denver is they got no draft capital really, and they're still suffering from everything they gave up for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton.
Yep.
So I see a hard fit in terms of compensation between the teams there. Obviously, he would be a good fit for the team overall. I think they have Javonte Williams slotting in as their starting running back right now, and I believe he only played like 4 games last year. And then we go over to the Bills. I'm so conflicted with the Bills because they just don't run the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you give them something like Jonathan Taylor, would they even know what to do with him? Type of thing. But obviously you'd have to. You'd have to, especially with Josh Allen running the ball as frequently as he does. You got to protect him somehow, and that's got to be with the run game. They signed him to a massive extension. I think he's in year 3 now of that extension.
Yep.
So, and his cap hit just balloons after this. So his salary is going to go up. Obviously, if you're going to pay that salary, you better make sure he's on the field.
Yep.
So in Philly, they have probably, arguably, the most complete roster in the NFL. I think they have DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny are there right now at the running back position. So Jonathan Taylor would come in and obviously take carries away from, even receptions away from both those guys. But it'd be almost unfair to put Jonathan Taylor in that offense. But
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see where that goes. For me, I'd be most intrigued if he ended up in Chicago, just with Justin Fields and they have the cap space to do it. But Miami, I think, makes the most sense right now.
Well, yeah, 100%.
You got Tua back there. He's coming off all those concussions he had last year. You're going to have to protect him as well, just like with Josh Allen in Buffalo. You just got to do something there that's going to help your offense and take a little bit of pressure off Tua. That's where I my mind goes.
Yeah, I think Miami is the obvious choice. I think that's where he should go. I mean, and it pains me to say that, obviously, as a Jet fan. Obviously, they were in on Dalvin Cook. They missed on Dalvin Cook, so they obviously want another running back.
Right.
So to me, Jonathan Taylor makes too much sense. Where I think he will go, I think, is nowhere. I think it's all for nothing. I think it's a whole lot of hype. I think he's going to end up with Indianapolis. I think one of them's going to cave, and either he'll get a few more bucks like Josh Jacobs did today, or he'll just come in and say, it is what it is. That's personally where I think it'll end up. I think I'll be surprised if he's traded, only because, we're now sitting here Saturday night. You got 2.5 days until the, quote unquote deadline.
Right. And
not only do you have to find trade compensation, but you also got to find a team that's willing to pay him. So there's a lot to moving pieces in the next couple of days. So personally, I think he's not going anywhere. But I think if he were, Miami would be the obvious choice.
Right. I mean, he's a free agent at the end of this year, so he's in the last year of his deal. So I guess from the Colts perspective, do you budge from that first round want?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the year, if he holds out for half the season like Chris Jones is intending to do, John, you might lose him for nothing. And that's always a predicament. Might as well just get a second round pick for him or whatever you can get for him and move on with whoever takes over that running back position there.
Yep, I agree. So that was the first part of Joe's question. The second part was kind of just, what our opinion is on the whole Trey Lance situation. Obviously, since that question, he has been traded to Dallas. For those who may not know, Trey Lance drafted last year from at San Francisco. San Francisco traded up a ton to get him. a ton of draft picks. They moved up to the number 3 spot in the overall draft. He played 4 games last year, I think it was 4 or 5 games, and then was out because of injury. Brock Purdy came in, and as they say, the rest is history. And like I said, they have since traded him. To me, I feel like everybody is bashing San Francisco, and I get that to a point. My whole thing is like, it's no bad look on Trey Lance at all, in my opinion. He lost his job for no other reason than injury.
Right.
And you can't tell me that whatever you saw in those first 4 games was enough to tell you that he's not the guy. Like, I refuse to believe that. I think this has more to do with their faith in Brock Purdy than Trey Lance. And I guess to a point, like, good for them for kind of taking ego out of it. And because, teams, they trade up, they give all these assets away, they draft a guy who clearly is just not the guy, and they don't want to be wrong. Right. So they stick with him. They bury their franchise for 3 or 4 seasons, waiting for this guy to either, bloom or die, for lack of a better term. And he, they didn't do that. I think it goes to more to say how much faith they have in Brock Purdy rather than how little faith they have in Trey Lance. I think that whatever they saw, both obviously on film and behind the scenes, practice, locker room, all that good stuff last year, that they have the utmost confidence in Brock Purdy.
Yeah. And credit Brock Purdy for showing out.
Yeah.
From the little sample that he put in last year. Obviously you're going to supplant. They still had Jimmy Garoppolo back then, but like you said, Trey Lance was the 3rd overall pick a couple of years ago, and you're going to supplant a third overall pick after a showcase of games. You got to show out, and he did.
Yep.
So give all the credit in the world to Brock Purdy. As for Trey Lance, injuries just massacred his career there in San Francisco. I think he's going to learn behind Jimmy Garoppolo that first year, and I think he broke his right index finger that for his rookie year, and then last year he broke his ankle, and that kept him out for the rest of the year. But I think this year, instead of just naming him the backup, they just put it in Sam Darnold and just decided to move on from Trey Lance altogether.
Yeah, when they did that, I mean, it was over. Like, you couldn't possibly tell me that he was going to stay on the roster when you have Sam Darnold ahead of him. Like,
right. And to me, it's such a conflict because I don't know I haven't watched the preseason, so I don't know how much it was Sam Darnold outplaying Trey Lance or in practice and stuff like that. But you can't go in and saying, Trey Lance, you were our starting quarterback last year, but you lost the gig because you broke your ankle. But now we're going in this year, and you're our backup. You can't do that to him,
right?
Especially someone who's in his 3rd year in the league, I believe. So they traded him to Dallas for the 4th round pick. Just cut your losses and get what you can. Basically, what I was saying with the Colts: cut your losses and get what you can. But from a Dallas perspective, it's very interesting to trade a 4th round pick for him because they already have Dak Prescott there. They have Cooper Rush as their backup, and I think they just signed him this past offseason to a 2-year deal. So from there, he's coming in to be the 3rd string guy anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where Dallas's mentality is with that. I'm not sure, because Trey Lance wants to be the number 2 and he wants to compete eventually for a starting gig, but obviously he doesn't have that many attempts. I think I read somewhere that Geno Smith had more attempts last year than Trey Lance has had since middle school.
Yeah.
That's an insane stat. Yeah. That's insane to me. So, I mean, it's no fault to Trey Lance. He got drafted where he is because of San Francisco, not because he played and he has talents and whatnot, and that kind of forced San Francisco's hands. But at the same time, it's San Francisco who had the option to pick him and trade all those assets for him. So at the end of the day, Trey Lance just didn't get a chance there with the injuries that piled up on him the past few years.
Yep, I agree. So new chapter for him, new chapter for the Niners and Dallas, and we'll see what plays out and who ends up looking smart in that situation. So we'll thank you for the question, Joe. The couple topics were great. We really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, congrats, Joe.
Congrats again, and feel free to send in any more the weeks to come. So we'll give a quick rundown of Hard Knocks episode 3. I think we were kind of both underwhelmed from talking to you earlier about the episode. I think the main highlight for me was obviously the talent show with the guy, can't even remember his name, doing the skit from 8 Mile.
B-Rabbit. He's now B-Rabbit.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then the clip that I found most interesting was the clip of Randall Cobb in the huddle with all of the receivers. And actually Aaron Rodgers responded to this afterwards, after the episode aired. And it was basically Cobb saying, look, I talked to Aaron and, we made a lot of mistakes today and it's all fine now, right? Because it's, it's preseason, it's practice. But he basically said something to the effect of, I promise you, he will lose his mind at some point if we keep making these mistakes. He will lose it.
Right.
He didn't use those words, but we're a clean show, so I'll clean it up a little bit. That's basically what he said. And I think that's so interesting because the media is just waiting for the quote unquote real Aaron Rodgers to show. Everybody thinks that he's come across just so good with the Jets so far. And that kind of alluded to the again, quote unquote old Aaron Rodgers. And I was surprised that he actually responded to that in the media this week after the episode aired. And he basically said something to the effect of, I don't really like to do that anymore. That's not my style. I'm not that guy anymore. I have no interest in yelling at guys and embarrassing them. But at the same time, we need to be held accountable.
Right.
But I just thought that clip was probably the most interesting part of the episode for me, just because, nobody knows Randall Cobb nobody knows Aaron Rodgers in that locker room better than Randall Cobb.
Right.
So I thought it was interesting for him to call it out, and also shows, that it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Like, they still have work to do. It's still going to be a work in progress for the first probably several weeks of the season.
Aaron Rodgers got his first preseason action today.
He did, and he looked phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just preseason. I refuse to get excited about preseason, even though he looked great. So did the defense. Nobody got injured, so that's great. But go ahead and give us your take quick about Hard Knocks.
Yeah, in terms of Aaron Rodgers' saying how he's not that old guy, Aaron Rodgers anymore.
Yeah.
I think it can even speak to how frustrated he was in Green Bay, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point.
So to me, it's like you always hear about, especially on draft day, how the Packers draft defensively in the first round heavily.
Yep.
So they never get Aaron Rodgers' help, quote unquote. So with Aaron Rodgers, I think that fact of how the Packers don't use first round picks on the offensive side of the game kind of dwelled on his mind, and he takes it out on those guys. If you guys aren't going to draft them in the first round, then I'm going to make them into like first round talents. And Aaron Rodgers is the type of dude who holds people accountable, and he makes everybody better. He wants everybody to get better, and he holds a standard to that. And we all know that. That's why he plays at an insane level.
Yep. That's why he's a Hall of Famer.
Yep. 4-time MVP and first ballot Hall of Famer. So, coming in here, obviously the cameras are on. Maybe the mentality is a little bit different for the public and whatnot, and we'll see if it changes during the course of the year. But as of right now, he's been looking like a chill dude out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you see the scraps and the scrums between the Bucks and the Jets, and Aaron Rodgers is like, man, I'm too old for this. Yeah, let's just keep going.
It's funny. I was watching it in my head. I'm like, dude, stay far away.
Oh yeah,
stay far, far away.
That's what they did with Sauce Gardner. Yeah. He was the only one who got held back on that one scrum.
Yep. Shout out to that coach.
Yep. That was funny to me. So you'll always have, I guess, a little bit of Green Bay in you. But this is Aaron Rodgers knows that this is a new chapter, and he wants to make things right, because he does have something to prove there, especially with Jordan Love now taking over in Green Bay. But yeah, in terms of Hard Knocks episode, it was calm. It was really a calm episode, to be honest. It was more about family and these borderline roster cuts.
Yep, and I think this is where it's going to start to get interesting.
Right.
Not only because we'll see somewhat of the behind the scenes of the roster management type stuff, but obviously, as we just spoke about, Rodgers actually played tonight. As we're recording on Saturday, and the Jets are finishing up their preseason right now against the Giants, and so we'll hopefully get to see some interesting clips of preparation, because they were playing this week they were preparing this week as if it was a regular game.
Mhm.
Everybody dressed, the preparation went into it. So I'm curious to see what the behind the scenes kind of looks like from that perspective. So I'm assuming that next week will be a little bit more entertaining. So
Right.
we'll have a recap for you guys next week as well. So,
Yep.
All right, let's dive in. We're going to continue our divisional breakdowns, which from what I can tell, we've gotten some positive feedback. People are enjoying it. So we're going to continue at it. This week, we're doing the NFC and the AFC North.
Yep.
We'll start in the NFC again in no particular order with the Detroit Lions. What are you looking at with the Lions this year?
The Lions. I am high. I am high on the Lions.
You're on the bandwagon.
I'm buying.
All
I'm
right.
buying the Lions this year. Their offense was, I believe, like a top 5 offense last year, and it only got better with the drafting of Gibbs, and then Jameson Williams should have a full offseason coming into the season, but he'll be suspended for 6 games for I believe gambling or something.
Yep.
So you still got St. Brown. There's number 1.
Yep. He's so good.
He's so good. Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, your slot guy. David Montgomery they signed, and then I think they drafted a tight end, Sam Laporta from Iowa. So that kind of replaces T.J. Hawkinson that they traded last year.
Yep.
But to me, they just have so many weapons offensively. It's just a question of how they'll respond defensively. Defensively, I think they were like a bottom 2 defense last year. Overall, Aaron Glenn's the defensive coordinator over there, and I know him because he used to be the secondary coach with New Orleans.
Yep.
So
played for the Jets way back when.
Oh, nice. So, but I believe he had some highs last year towards the back half of the year where they started turning it on, especially in the second half of the year. So Dan Campbell. Shout out Dan Campbell. That man,
he's a beast.
He's a beast.
It's
I
so
love
funny,
Dan Campbell.
if you remember his introductory press conference when he first got hired, he's talking about chewing people's ankles and just saying like ridiculous stuff. And I remember he was just getting slammed in the media. And it's like now you look at him and you're like, that makes total sense for Dan Campbell. Like that's exactly who he is.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have it any other way. So I think that looking back on that is so funny, but
he stayed consistent with his message, and people were starting to buy in.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember he is a former Saints coach as well. He's a tight ends coach, and I remember he used to interview for head coaching gigs all the time. I think for 2 years before he got the Lions head coaching gig, but imagine those teams who interviewed him and passed up on him.
Yep.
Kicking themselves right now. And,
yep.
So. Dan Campbell's just a great coach, and it just becomes a question defensively. But I know they overhauled that DB room.
Yep. Yeah. My big thing with the Lions, and it's actually something I wrote down for the Vikings as well. They had a lot of wins. They won a lot of very, very close games last year, and I feel like that's just not a trend that can continue. Like at some point, the ball's going to bounce the other way, right. And so I think that they had 9 wins last year. How many of those that were 1-score wins are going to go the opposite way this year? I think they're going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be very good. I'm not saying I'm buying the hype. I'm not saying they should be featured on the first game this year. I think that's kind of crazy. Kansas City and the Lions, I just don't see that personally. Right. Sorry, NBC. But I think that they're going to be competitive. I think that division's wide open. So naturally, it makes for entertainment with, really not knowing who's going to do what in the NFC North. But the jury's still out for me on the Lions. I really, obviously, like you said, Jameson Williams is suspended the first 6 games. They lost Jamal Williams to the Saints. Mm-hmm. He led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. Granted, they were all almost all 1 yard.
Right.
But that's production that you lost. Jared Goff is one of those underrated guys that, you don't think of.
He's been to the Super Bowl.
He balled out last year. He, I think, was in top 5 in yardage. Nobody knows that, or nobody thinks about that when it comes to Jared Goff.
Nope.
But my jury's, for me, I'm waiting to see on the Lions. I'm not sold yet, like you are, but I think they're going to be. I think they're still going to be very competitive, and that's going to put them in a good spot because that division is in my opinion, wide open.
Okay.
The Vikings.
Vikings. So I think the main storyline with the Vikings last year was that they were 11-0 in one-score games.
Yep.
So just like
Yep.
with the theme with the
That's
with
exactly
the Lions.
what I was going to say.
11-0, and I think that was an NFL record. And then come playoff time, shout out Jake. So Jake's been been a fan for a long time, but sorry to bring this up, but they lost on a one-score game in the playoffs, first game in the playoffs. So
Yeah, sorry, Jake.
Sorry, Jake.
We love you, buddy.
That's right. So to me, like you said, there's expected to be some sort of regression there.
You can't help but take a step back when 11 of your 13 wins are by one score.
Yep.
Just naturally, it's going to happen.
Yep, and I believe 8 of those came from Kirk Cousins leading a fourth quarter, come from behind win type of thing.
Including the biggest comeback in NFL history down, what was it, 38-0, 33, something like that?
Yeah.
Something absurd.
Yep, to the Colts.
Yep.
So, it's going to be one of those seasons where obviously you have your hopes up coming from a 13-win season last year, but at the same time, temper expectations. I know they still have Justin Jefferson there, but defensively is going to be the biggest question mark there as well. Just same with the Lions, but in terms of the Vikings, I didn't see much in their offseason review that they improved at all, to be honest with you. I believe their biggest acquisition was Brian Flores.
Yeah.
So let me.
That'll help the defense right there for sure.
New defensive coordinator right there, Brian Flores. So they lost a lot. Eric Kendricks, Darius Smith, Patrick Peterson. So we'll see how they respond there. But I just don't think their defense is going to be able to hold up. Kirk Cousins obviously has a lot more highs than lows, but I don't think he has the defense to compensate for his lows going into the season.
Yeah, he's got to be good, right? I think that's part of the issue is that he has to be on pretty much every week. Yeah. With that defense, obviously they lost Dalvin Cook. They decided to release Dalvin Cook, which I don't know that I understood that. I don't understand what the thought process was there. Right. I mean, who's their starter now? Alexander Madison.
Yep.
I mean, he had a decent year last year in backup in a backup role, but I mean, Dalvin Cook is a generational type guy. I don't know what the thought process that was there with releasing him, but I think that can't help but take a step back in the run game,
right?
And he also was a decent pass catcher as well. Mm-hmm. So I think to your point, it's going to and they lost Adam Thielen, which he's getting up there in age, but he was that reliable.
Security
blanket was going to be there at the first down yardage, always there. So that's going to be a part too. But I think, I'm still high on the Vikings. I think that, they were a 13-win team. Granted, they were close games. They're going to take a step back, but I still think that they're going to be right there in this division. Right. I love Kirk Cousins. I will say, from that Netflix documentary, I became an enormous Kirk Cousins fan, which I've heard that from multiple people. He just came across so good in that show. So I love that guy now. I want him to be successful. I think they will. I mean, Justin Jefferson, I think that
they have TJ Hawkinson
and TJ Hawkinson.
They drafted a wide receiver too.
Yeah,
Jordan Addison.
Yep. So I think that they're going to be right there, in my opinion, in the NFC North.
Yep.
The Green Bay Packers, a lot of storylines going on there with them.
Woo! So my main phrase for the Packers is love for love. Do you have love for love? Yeah. Honestly, I honestly don't even know how to predict it. To be honest, he's had all the years to take in the offense. He's had all the years to delve into NFL life and try to come out for the better, especially with Aaron Rodgers in front of you, and he doesn't like you really being there. Like that puts a chip on your shoulder. You got to go out and ball out. You have to.
Yep.
So, but whether that's going to be good pressure or bad pressure for Jordan Love, that's to be seen. Obviously, even before Aaron Rodgers, they had Brett Favre, so they've had a lot of continuity there with Hall of Fame caliber play.
A lot to live up to.
Yep. So how Jordan Love's going to play, it's just a matter. It's just a waiting game. We'll see how that translates. But in terms of offensive cast around him, I like Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs.
No Dobbs, yep.
Yep. But at the same
Aaron
time,
Jones is still a beast.
Yep. Aaron
in the run
Jones,
game.
AJ Dillon
Yep.
are back there, and I think they're going to be a run-heavy team this year.
For sure.
Really,
For
I
sure.
really do.
Their defense is sneaky good. Not a lot of people talk about their defense. They
Nope.
have a really, really good defense.
Yep. But yeah, when Aaron Rodgers came in to take over for Brett Favre, I think a lot of people forget this, but he had Greg Jennings right there receiving. Like he had like another
Jordy Nelson. Yeah.
He had weapons,
Yeah.
but Jordan Love's coming in with two second or third year players.
Yeah.
I think they're only 2 years in now, but it's going to be. I think it's going to be rough sledding at the beginning, and how they grow as a trio will definitely foretell how the rest of their season's going to come out. And going back to what you said about their defense is loaded with first round talent. All that first round talent that Aaron Rodgers wanted, and Green Bay Packers fans wanted in the offense. It's all on the defensive side, and they've made out pretty well defensively. I think they have like 8 first round picks back there.
Yeah.
So to me, their defense will keep them in games. It'll depend on if their offense can score enough points to get them the wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, you hear reports coming out of training camp that they look fast, they look young, and they look athletic for the first time in a while. So will that translate to wins?
Right.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? It could very easily. It's all going to be on Jordan Love. He's looked sharp in the preseason. He's made some throws that have been impressive, some back shoulders, that sort of thing. So I think the Packers could be surprising. I don't know that they'll make the playoffs necessarily. I don't have them making the playoffs personally, but I think that they're going to be more competitive than people think. I think you naturally go to rebuild when you step down from Aaron Rodgers, and while it still will be, somewhat of a rebuild, I think that they're going to be competitive,
Right.
Especially in that division. So we'll see what happens there. Last but not least, in the NFC North, the Bears. You talk about expectations, you talk about hype. There is so much going into this year. I feel like people, you hear the MVP talk for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
You hear, for me, what's so curious, the biggest storyline for the Bears is how much pressure is on the front office. Because you think they were the worst team in the league last year. They had the first pick in the draft. They had a chance to get Bryce Young, who we've already talked about, and they had enough faith in Justin Fields to trade that pick. So I think you're putting yourself right in the middle of the target, right? Bullseye on your back. Are you going to be correct? Is Justin Fields going to be that guy, or are you going to be fired in a year or two because you didn't draft Bryce Young?
Right.
Obviously they made out great in that trade. They got DJ Moore, which I think is a huge trade.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think that for me is even more so than Justin Fields' development is just how much pressure is on the front office now, relying on him to play well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Chicago is probably my most interesting team especially in the NFC, maybe even in all of football. And they're coming off a 3-win season last year.
Yep.
So I think we should temper expectations on them and just look for a step forward. But it's definitely going to be very reliant on Justin Fields and what sort of development he steps into year 3, I believe. And obviously you have the MVP chance and whatnot and predictions. And that just goes to show with what sort of league this is turning into. You had Lamar Jackson win MVP and
it's a running league.
Yep.
It's a mobile quarterback league.
Yeah, absolutely. So they see that and they feast off of it. And Justin Fields is arguably the best right now with that combo. And Lamar Jackson's had his injuries and in terms of mobile quarterbacks, we'll see how Bryce Young comes out, CJ Stroud. But as for Josh Allen, obviously has to take a step back from running the ball so much. So Justin Fields,
Justin Fields needs to do that also. That's one thing that
absolutely.
That's one thing that I wrote down is can he prove that he can do it with his arm the same that he's already proved he can do it with his legs? He's dynamic on the ground. He is a beast when he tucks it and runs.
Oh yeah.
It's like you got to turn to that game and see what he's about to do because it's special.
Yep.
But he has to be able to prove that he can stand in the pocket and make those throws also. And I think
right.
I think that trade, getting his number one wide receiver, will certainly help that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the more I think about it, I think they promote being mobile because they want the arm to develop at a natural pace rather than trying to force throws where you're not ready to make those throws. And I mean, it's year 3 now, so hopefully Justin Fields does show a lot more promise in his arm than his legs now, and he can start being more of a quarterback rather than a mobile. I guess a running back quarterback type of combo there. But it's definitely going to be heavily reliant on Justin Fields, especially with Khalil Herbert back there. He's been on split duties with David Montgomery, but he's now the lead back there. Whether they trade for Jonathan Taylor or not, that'll be to be seen. But it's going to be definitely Fields' offense to run in any capacity he sees fit. Defensively, they signed a lot of guys. I think they signed Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. And from there, it's going to be about their pass rush. I think, let's see here, Yannick Ngakoue.
Yep.
That's Yannick
Ngakoue.
I've been trying to pronounce that name all day, but
From Jacksonville, I think. Yeah.
Well, he's on his 5th team in 5 years.
Yeah.
So he's been traveling. So I think last year their sack leader was a rookie safety who had 4 sacks. So
that's sad.
Yep. Ngakoue is definitely going to be an upgrade, but
Tremaine Edmonds, that to me, that signing to me is
Edmonds,
huge.
yep.
He was the cornerstone of that Buffalo defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is a big signing for their defense.
Absolutely. So it's just going to be a matter if they can get pressure on the quarterback defensively. Ngakoue is going to help there, but he's going to be basically a third down defensive end exclusively because he's not really good at run blocking. So where they go, I have high hopes for them, but at the same time, I think they're still a little bit off before being a real contender there.
Yep, I agree. Yep. I agree. All right, so we'll switch gears and we'll do the AFC North, which I am just so excited to talk about. I'm excited, but I'm also just perplexed because I have no idea what's going on in this division. Realistically, I know it's not going to happen, but I honestly think all 4 teams could make the playoffs. I really do.
They're very capable.
I think it's the best division in football, and that's even with, I'm obviously a little bit of a homer to the AFC East, but I think that the AFC North is going to prove to be just a tough nose,
and it's such
division.
A consistent.
It is. It always is.
Blood nose division.
Teams that always seem to hate each other, and now it's going to be even more magnified with the fact that they're all going to be competitive. So
absolutely,
we'll start with the Browns.
The Browns. So, well, this is going to be a question mark about Deshaun Watson. Or where
he did not look good when he came back after week 12.
Yeah,
I think he was suspended the first 12 weeks, obviously for all the off the field stuff, and so he did not look good at all. No. So I'm be very curious to see. Okay, he's had a full preseason, he's had a full off season with the Browns. All that drama, hopefully, is aside.
Yep,
is past him at least for now. And so what does his preparation look like, and what is it going to translate to on the field?
Yeah, you'd expect he'd be a lot more prepared. I mean, obviously last year he had all those legal issues, which I don't think he's had this year anymore. He's settled with all that. So being finally committed to football again 24/7 is probably going to be a step in the right direction for Deshaun Watson. But depending what version of Watson you get is definitely going to dictate where the Browns go this year, I feel like.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Obviously, you have Chubb back there, no more Kareem Hunt, but Chubb's been there for a while, and he's been really dominant for a couple of years at least, even before Hunt made it there. I've always been a big Chubb fan. So even if he produces at the level we know he can, Cleveland still has put up 6-7 wins. So it's definitely going to be a quarterback play issue there in Cleveland. Defensively, their biggest thing to me is Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is such a beast.
I was just going to say that. He succeeds everywhere he goes. Absolutely. As a defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Head coaches, that's a different conversation. But on the defensive side, those defenses get better every single time he shows up.
Yep. So to me, even though they signed Zadarius Smith, Delvin Tomlinson, and Juan Thornhill, Jim Schwartz is still going to be the mastermind behind that defense. And he's the biggest upgrade there, in my opinion. So we'll see where Cleveland goes, finishes in that division. But personally, I think Watson should go back to pre-issue Watson.
Yeah, I think a couple things. So I think that the not having Kareem Hunt is bigger storyline than people want to think, because he was that pass catcher back.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't have Nick Chubb involved in the pass game at all.
Right.
So I'll be curious to see what his role looks like this year. If he's more of a complete third down back, because Kareem Hunt basically took third down from him every single drive for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be curious to see, that's going to add a different element to the pass game, to the third down pass game specifically. And, I'm kind of giving you a sneak peek into my fantasy outlook here. I think that the trade that they made with the Jets to get Elijah Moore is going to have a big impact. I think that Elijah Moore is a heck of a talent that just didn't have a quarterback thrown to him.
Yeah.
And so I think that if he can get any chemistry with Watson, I think that the combination of Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, and Elijah Moore could be ecstatic. And you think about tight end David Njoku, Nick Chubb, like they have the potential on offense to be scary.
Yep.
So I think that trade, I haven't heard anybody talk about it. The Elijah Moore trade, it happened, way back when, and nobody's really everyone's like, Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, and rightfully so. But I think that Elijah Moore has a potential to have a huge impact on that team.
Yeah, and that's no fault to Elijah Moore.
No,
like you said, it was quarterback play that was kind of deterring him from being a name to recognize in the NFL. But I think with Deshaun Watson and being on the opposite side of Amari Cooper, it should free him up quite a bit, and I expect big things from Elijah Moore too.
Yep. All right. So moving on, we'll go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think I'll start here. Mm-hmm. I love Mike Tomlin. I think I would run through a wall for that guy if I was playing for him.
Yep.
I just think he's got swag. He's a good coach. He knows how to motivate. He's never had a losing season. I feel like that gets played and talked about in the media countless times, but I don't think you can overstate that enough.
No.
I mean, he's literally never had a losing season as a head coach in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to me. That's crazy when you think about all the Big Ben injuries, the way they started out last year. They went on a crazy winning streak to end the year. I think they won 7 in a row to finish the season. And I think that he's just the man. I love Mike Tomlin. So I think, you can never understate how much of an impact a good head coach makes on your football team.
Right.
Kenny Pickett has looked, again, it's preseason. I've given up on putting stake in the preseason.
Right.
Having said that, he's looked amazing. He led 5 drives in the preseason, and all 3 games combined, every single one of them was a touchdown drive. Take that with what you will, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. But this could be the jump that everybody talks about and everybody's waiting with Kenny Pickett. So I'm high on the Steelers this year. I think they're up and coming. I don't have maybe expectations for them this year. Mm-hmm. But I think that they're going to be very, very competitive in that tough division.
Oh yeah, you make a very compelling case for the Steelers because Mike Tomlin is Mike Tomlin, and like you said,
he's like the coolest guy in the NFL. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh yeah, yep. So I mean, he's got a track record of being that coach that knows how to win. He creates competitors on his team.
Yep.
So you definitely have an advantage over a lot of teams. The only problem is that division you're in. That division is so talented.
Yep.
And it's
100%.
just so ferocious that sometimes I want to say it gets negated completely, but it definitely lessens the effect of Mike Tomlin being the coach in that division. If it was in any other division, I'd be like, oh, Mike Tomlin's there. They're going to be a top 2 team in that division all the time. But with how each team is going into this division this year, it's hard. It's going to be definitely a rough sledding for each game they play against one another. They got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson they signed to be the trio wide receivers there. It's definitely going to come down to Pickett. My phrase for Pittsburgh is Pickett signs. They're either going to make signs for him to love him, or they're going to Pickett signs to get rid of him.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see what sort of jump he makes in his own right.
If the preseason's any indication, good Lord. I mean,
Honestly, we went last year to the Saints and Steelers game over in Pittsburgh. So
and it was negative 50 degrees.
Negative 50 degrees.
No, it wasn't. It was like 30, but it felt like
it. Yeah, we got a little.
It was so cold.
Yep.
I was cold for like 4 days, guys. Like, I was. Anyways, go ahead.
Yep.
Proceed.
So we saw Kenny Pickett live.
Yes, we did.
And I mean, from what I was impressed about, he looked like he's capable of making the smart decision. He's not going to look to turn the ball over. Well, I mean, no quarterback wants to turn the ball over, but it looks like he makes a conscientious effort to not turn the ball over.
Yep.
So he's definitely going to go for that game manager type of role, and I think he's going to exceed at that. But will it be this year or next year where they start contending? That's to be seen. I have a more high next year than this year.
Yep. Baltimore. Baltimore is my team in this division. I'll give it away now. I am super high on Baltimore. We just went on at length about Mike Tomlin, and the same could be said for John Harbaugh. I love John Harbaugh. I think he's a no-nonsense guy. I think he's a great, phenomenal coach.
Yep.
When you think about Baltimore last year, I mean, it was all in the preseason that for the most part that this happened. So people forget just how many injuries they had. It was a staggering amount of injuries that they had in the preseason. Like, people wrote them off in the preseason. And so, obviously they were in phenomenal shape before Lamar got injured. And then the whole contract issue, took place. Was he, sitting out to get a deal? Was he not? All that. But they still made the playoffs. And again, I think people forget they were a fumble at the goal line and a 99-yard touchdown return in the playoff against Cincinnati away from winning that game with Tyler Huntley as their quarterback. So I think that Baltimore, if they can stay healthy this year, they will win that division. I know the Bengals are the sexy pick in this division. Everybody loves Joe Burrow, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. I am so high on Baltimore this year. Like, I think that they're going to be scary, scary good. When you think about getting OBJ, they got Jadeveon Clowney on the defensive side. They made that signing. J.K. Dobbins, I think, is going to be a beast. He had some injury issues last year. Obviously, Justin Tucker could kick it from one end zone to the other, and so he's a weapon in special teams. I think that team, I think they're going to be phenomenal. And I think that obviously we've already talked about it's a tough division, but I think if they can even be 10% healthier than they were last year, which is not saying much because they had guys out all over the place.
Right.
I think that they're going to be very, very good.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to depend on what sort of offense they run now with the new offensive coordinator.
Yep.
Todd Monken.
Yeah. Great point.
Coming in from Georgia. Will they restrain Lamar a little bit from running and focus more on passing? I mean, they got the weapons to do it now. They signed Odell Beckham Jr. They drafted Zay Flowers at I believe number 22 overall.
Yeah. Speaking real quick, I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
I heard something very interesting this week that I hadn't actually heard before. One of the big things coming in with this new offensive coordinator, I guess I didn't know this, but their previous OC would not let Lamar make any changes at the line.
Really?
Yes. And so that's been a topic this offseason that obviously now this new offensive coordinator, he's coming in, he's implementing a new scheme. He's giving Lamar that freedom to make those checks depending on what he sees. So I think that could have a crazy impact. I don't know how you don't let a guy like that make those decisions at the line of scrimmage depending on what he sees on the defense. I was shocked when I heard that. And I think that something as little as that, giving him that freedom, could make a huge impact on his performance this year. So I wanted to throw that in because I thought that was extremely interesting.
Yeah, it's the first time I'm hearing about that too. And the first thing that jumps to mind is maybe that's why Lamar Jackson was always scrambling. You can't make checks or adjust any calls up front. So all of a sudden maybe he sees you're put in a bad position, but you can't make the change. So first thought is like, all right, I'm gonna have to scramble on this, and I'm gonna have to run. So
I don't even know how you do that.
Right?
How do you look and see? Okay, they're blitzing. I'm screwed.
Yep.
But okay, game on, guys. Like, I mean, what are we doing?
Honestly, that's interesting to me. I don't know how.
Yeah, how
you can have success.
I heard that on ESPN radio. So I mean, take it for what it's worth.
Right.
I don't remember who it was or when it was, but I heard that this week on my drive to work, and I was shocked by that.
Right. I mean, yeah, we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how I guess that offense develops with Monken now, and I'm assuming he's going to let Lamar Jackson have some more free reign there than the previous offensive coordinator. J.K. Dobbins is now back there, taking the full loader there at running back. Mark Andrews coming back. And Mark Andrews has just been consistent number 2 tight end.
He's a beast.
He's always behind Travis Kelce in fantasy. So
he really needs Lamar Jackson though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you talk about a drop off a cliff when Lamar was injured last year. I mean Mark Andrews' production just disappeared.
Yeah. Yep. So I think there's a certain trust there with Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews.
No doubt.
So even with the wide receiver weapons, coming in, I think Mark Andrews will still be that number 1 pass catcher there. Even in terms of defense, like I said, Jim Harbaugh is just a mastermind there with the defense, always producing a top 10 defense there consistently. And this is why even though I'm high on Mike Tomlin, you just have John Harbaugh there. Always, they know each other so well,
and that's why they're always so competitive every single year. It's because of those two guys right there. It doesn't matter who's on the team. So defensively, they lost quite a few pieces. Calais Campbell, Justin Houston, Jason Pierre-Paul, Marcus Peters, and Chuck Clark. Gosh, is that all?
You want more?
Golly.
So there's definitely some sort of a use movement going on there. There's going to be some unproven parts there. The biggest question mark is going to be the pass rush. I believe I was telling you earlier that I looked at other defensive linemen, and none of them have even 10 career sacks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's
crazy.
So that's going to be a point of emphasis, I'm sure. I love their linebackers. They have Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen there. Marcus Williams is former Saint. They're at safety. So they have pieces in the secondary, and linebacker is just going to be depending if pass rush can get there in time to help them out.
Yep.
But yeah, offensively they should be good.
Scary, yeah.
Yep.
Last but not least, the Bengals. Obviously, this is everybody's pick. Everybody loves the Bengals. Everybody loves Joe Burrow. I'm not as high on them this year. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I'm not saying they're going to plummet.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they're bound to take a step back. They've been on an ascension since he came in the league, and I have nothing to validate this at all. But I just have a feeling. Obviously he's one of the storylines. All kidding aside, is he's dealing with an injury right now. He had a calf injury in preseason.
Right.
I don't know that they've actually given a specific timeline yet. If he's going to miss a couple weeks, I know their first couple weeks of the season are manageable if they have to have him sit out and heal up. So I don't think that'll impact them as far as like further down the line in playoff contention. But that could be a storyline. Is how is his calf injury going to pop back up? I've heard the calf is a nagging type injury where you could feel great, and then the next week it's going to pop right back up again. So that could be something that we see him battle all throughout the year. But if he's healthy, obviously we all know what he can do. Him and Jamar Chase are special.
Right.
That combination is special. They have the best receiving group in the league, in my opinion. They have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd.
Right.
That trio is, again, in my opinion, it's the best in the league. So that doesn't hurt to have, Joe Burrow throwing those guys the ball. But I think that, I don't know that they're necessarily going to take a step back. I think it's a matter of everybody else in the division taking a step up.
Right.
I really think that's what it is. I think it's going to be them. You got to play everybody in your division twice, and so those are 6 tough games.
Oh, absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on the Bengals?
Yeah, in terms of their offense, I think their biggest acquisition in the offseason was Orlando Brown Jr., the left tackle.
Doubt.
Absolutely.
Doubt.
So that I think last year, let me get his name right. Jonah Williams was the left tackle, and he allowed pressure like 17% of the time. He had like a pass win rate of like 83%. And now with Orlando Brown, I think he had a win rate of 91%. So you're already going up 8% there.
Also, did you hear that he was on a podcast this week and he said that the Jets offered him more money?
Orlando Brown?
Yes.
Did he really?
He did.
I didn't hear that.
He said that the Bengals were the best spot for him. He said even though he essentially gave him a shout out and said that they offered him a much more competitive deal, but he wanted to go to Cincinnati. So thanks, Orlando.
Thanks, Orlando.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Oh man. Well, we'll see if he if he lives up to the hype over there. I know Cincinnati's probably hoping it can be kind of like how the Rams did with Andrew Whitworth.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago when he helped take them to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Obviously, you put him in your left tackle and you slide whoever was there to the right tackle's position, and it just improves your entire offensive line. So I'm sure we'll try to do this, especially with Jonah Williams now sliding over to the right tackle. So it should improve their offensive line. And now with Joe Burrow kind of on that injury scare radar, it's definitely going to help. And for me, my biggest question is it going to lead to more Joe Mixon? Mixon has been there a while, but I feel like he's always been held back because they always want to emphasis the passing game with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and you have every right to. But at the same time, Mixon is no slouch. He's been a really good running back for quite a few years there. So I like Joe Mixon. I think he's a reliable running back, and I think even with Joe Burrow's scare, they should be able to stave off with a better running game. Just emphasize Joe Mixon a lot more. Defensively, they lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell. They both signed in to the NFC South. Bates to Atlanta and Bell to Carolina. So you're looking at two new safeties back there. So there's going to be some changeover back there. So it's just a question of can the defense hold, especially with everybody's offense in that division improving. So that's a question to remain to be seen.
Yep. All right. So that wraps up the AFC and the NFC North. We'll do our predictions like we do every week. And 2 weeks in a row, me and Jeff are nowhere on the same page here. So I'll go first with the NFC North. I have Minnesota still, winning that division again. I think that they're still going to be good enough to hold off the other teams that we discussed. I have Detroit finishing second. I think that they'll be a wild card team. I think that they're going to be good, but I think that Minnesota will hold them off. I have Green Bay finishing third, and I have Chicago in last in that division. I think they're going to take a step up from the 3 wins. I think Justin Fields is going to have a huge impact, but I still think that they have some work to do. What are your thoughts?
So I actually have Detroit winning this year. Winning
that division.
A
lot of people. I can see that. A lot of people are saying that.
Yeah, I mean their last division title was 1993, so it's the year we were born, basically. So it's at some point they got to win a division title, you would think. And I think this is the year they really have a lot of the puzzle pieces to come together and take that gigantic step forward that it's been eluding them for a very long time. In second place, I got Green Bay. Jordan Love, even if he doesn't develop as fast, I think they have enough in the running game and defensively to keep him in games and steal 1 or 2, especially in the beginning of the season until Jordan Love gets his feet directly under him for the rest of the year, and then maybe he can lead to some wins under his own talent. So from there, I got Chicago going third. Justin Fields, I wanna love Justin Fields. I wanna love Chicago, especially all the acquisitions they made defensively.
Yep.
I think they should definitely have a subpar year at least. I think that's gonna be their floor, with maybe even a 10-win season as their ceiling. And last, I think Minnesota. Sorry, Jake.
Golly,
but it's going to be a first to worst. I believe we mentioned those 1-score games, and you said how it can't always hold up. But for me, the way I see it, Detroit's actually going to pull away more because of that offense and improvement on defense, and Minnesota is going to be more of that regression that we usually see because of
the
defense just not being able to hold up that well.
Well, once again, Jeff, we are on opposite ends of the spectrum with the NFC North, so we'll see what happens there. The AFC North, I have Baltimore winning that division. Like I already talked about, I think that they're going to be great this year. I have the Bengals in second, obviously still making the playoffs. I have the Steelers in third, and I have the Browns in the bottom of that division. I will say that I think that this is a division where the top 3 teams make the playoffs. I really do. I think the Bengals and the Steelers are still both going to make the playoffs.
Yes. I regardless of how you cut it, I think whoever finishes top 3 in that division, and because we have different winners of that division, and I'll go into that now. But definitely, those top three are definitely going to be in the playoffs. I feel like I don't even think it's a question of it.
Yep.
It's just who's going to be in those top three slots. But for me, I have the Browns winning that division. So I'm going
going on?
I'm going all out with Detroit and
on?
Cleveland winning their divisions, which is it's maddening to me. Trust me, I try to talk myself out of putting Cleveland here, but there's just so much to like about them. And with Deshaun Watson actually getting an off season to prepare rather than having to face all these distractions and side issues that he's been going through, I like what Cleveland is doing. It's just about getting, and then Jim Schwartz, like we said, I think that's just a massive underrated addition there for that defense. Second, I got the Bengals. The Bengals will be the Bengals, I believe. Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon. They have every piece offensively to contend for a Super Bowl. It's just going to be a question of that defense. How much can they hold? As for the Ravens, it's just about the pass rush. If you can't go to the quarterback, I just can't see winning too many games type of thing. But the Ravens, John Harbaugh will always produce a very adequate defense, so that elevates the Ravens to a 9-10 win team right there for me. And lastly, I got the Steelers. I think they're just a year off until Kenny Pickett. If he takes a step in the right direction, he can.
I think they need a little bit more talent in the receiver room.
True. Deontay Johnson as your number one is a little sketchy. Maybe he can be a number two or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see next year, but I think they're a year off.
Yep.
So that's how I have the division rolling out.
I'm on board with that.
Yep.
So we literally have, like, I have Minnesota winning. You have Minnesota in last.
Yeah.
I have the Browns in last. You have the Browns winning the division. So that is just crazy. All right. So we'll finish up here. We'll try and wrap up. We're going a little long this week, but we had a lot of good topics. But we'll wrap up with our fantasy must-haves, our players to stay away from, and our sleepers from each division. For me, I'll go first with the NFC. My must-have, this is a pretty common sense statement, Justin Jefferson. He's going to go number one in almost every fantasy draft. So that pretty much goes without saying. Stay away. I wrote Christian Watson. The reason I wrote this is because I have heard that Jordan Love has a more preference to the intermediate throws, which favors Romeo Doubs rather than Christian Watson, who's kind of like that home run, deep ball type guy.
Yep.
I've heard that he already has phenomenal chemistry with Doubs. So that's why I wrote stay away from Watson, just because, I mean, if he's an all or nothing guy as it is, that's always risky. But if you know that your quarterback has a good relationship with the wide receiver across from you, that could also hinder your stats as well.
Right.
My sleeper, I wrote Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Detroit. I have heard crazy comparisons about this guy. I've heard that he is the next Alvin Kamara. So shout out to the Saints. Shout out you. Alabama running back last year, over 900 rushing yards, over 450 receiving yards last year, 10 touchdowns. I think that he's going to be a really good sleeper.
Okay. Yeah, as for me, for my must-have, I got DJ Moore over there in Chicago. I think Justin Fields has a really great arm, and I think he'll be looking to take some shots there with DJ Moore.
And they've already shown that, right? In the preseason, they've already shown that they're going to be a dynamic duo.
Oh, absolutely. So I expect high things from DJ Moore. So my stay away, I got Jahmyr Gibbs.
What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Come on.
So your sleeper is my stay away. It just comes down to how many mouths can you feed there in Detroit with the one ball, and you got David Montgomery back there as well, and he's always been splitting carries over there in Chicago beforehand. So I feel like that's going to be a carryover even here, just to ease Gibbs into the offensive role. But you got St. Brown, you got Josh Reynolds, you got Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end. It's just going to be a lot of spreading the ball, and I'm not sure how many carries Gibbs is going to get out of that. And then my sleeper, I got Khalil Herbert. Right now, he's the number one running back there in Chicago. In case of a trade like for Jonathan Taylor or something, I don't really see any competition against Herbert in that backfield. So right now, we'll see if they decide to not rely on Justin Fields' legs as much and give Khalil Herbert a little bit more responsibility there.
Okay. Shifting to the AFC North, my must-have, again, pretty common sense, is not Jamar Chase. It's Nick Chubb. I'm a huge Nick Chubb fan. I think that he's one of those guys that we talked about it with Travis Kelce, right? He could win you your fantasy matchup that week. I think Nick Chubb could do the same.
Absolutely.
And so I'm always going to draft him. If I have that middle, 4 to 8 pick in the first round, Nick Chubb is always going to be at the top of my list.
Yep.
I'm staying away from Najee Harris, the running back from Pittsburgh. He just looks slow to me. Like, I watched him a couple games last year. Obviously, we watched him in person last year.
Yep.
He just doesn't look like he has that burst,
right?
To make guys miss. He just looks like he's a power guy, and a lot of the film that we watched last year, a lot of highlights we watched from him, he was getting stuffed at the line almost every single time.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't been nearly as dynamic in the pass game as he was at Alabama.
Right.
And so I'm staying away from Najee Harris. And my sleeper, I kind of already talked about it, is Elijah Moore. I think that he is going to have a phenomenal year in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson.
Okay. As for me, my must-have is Joe Mixon. As I explained earlier,
I almost put him as my stay away.
Really?
I did, yeah. Almost. Which would be par for the course for this episode.
Absolutely. Well, I think with Joe Burrow having that calf scare, they'll probably shift a little bit more focus to Joe Mixon getting a little bit more carries than what they intended to at the beginning of the year. So just to keep Joe Burrow as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Stay away. I got J.K. Dobbins.
That surprises me, this one.
Yep. I like J.K. Dobbins. It's just a matter of how they're going to run that offense, because I'm not sure how Todd Monken's going to.
It remains to be seen, right?
Yeah. I just don't know how Todd Monken's going to feed Lamar Jackson and tell him to run, tell him to hand it off, tell him to pass the ball a lot more. And they invested heavily on the wide receiver corps this year with Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers as a first round pick. Excuse me, but it's just going to be one of those things where I'm on edge about J.K. Dobbins getting the opportunities that a number one running back should get. And then as my sleeper, I got Zay Flowers. I think I have him higher than Odell Beckham Jr. I think Odell's coming back from ACL tear 2 years ago, I believe, and then last year he just took it completely off.
He didn't play at all. Yeah.
So it's Zay Flowers, first round pick, first round talent. And I've heard he's running great routes over there in camp in preseason. So I think Zay Flowers has the higher ceiling of the two. So I have him as my sleeper pick.
I'm on board with that. I've heard very similar things about him so far. So I got no complaints there. All right. Well, that wraps us up for the AFC and NFC North.
Book it.
Went a little long this week. Hopefully you stuck with us, but I think we had a lot of good talking points. A lot happened this week in the NFL, and I think it's going to continue next week as well with roster cut downs. And next week is our last divisional breakdown until we get into the regular season. So obviously it's the one I'm most excited about, AFC East and NFC East. Lot to discuss there. And so what we'll do is we'll discuss those divisions. We'll do our predictions like we always do. We'll do our fantasy stuff. But also, Jeff, I didn't tell you this yet, but we're going to also do a playoff ranking. So we'll rank our seeds 1 through 7.
Okay.
And then we'll do a Super Bowl prediction, each of us.
Okay.
And we'll just jot it all down. So again, we've done the divisions,
right? And
then we'll do it from a playoff perspective too. Who we think, obviously everybody will know who we think is going to win each division, but where do we think that they're going to end up as far as playoff rankings?
Right.
And then we'll do a Super Bowl prediction, and we'll wrap it all up as we dive into the season.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. So a lot that's going to come next week as well. So make sure you stay tuned. Again, send us anything that pops up this week that you guys want us to discuss or you want insight or opinion on.
Yep.
Please feel free to send it in. We hope that you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.
Laters.
Thanks for listening to What Did They Know podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media outlets to see future episode details. And don't forget to send in any questions or topics that you want to see the guys discuss in their weekly episodes to come.